Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Ignite podcast. Today I'm being joined by Mick Donaghy. Mate, welcome to the call.
Yeah, good stuff, mate. Good stuff. Looking forward to chatting further and exploring a little bit more about what's going on in construction. It's pretty crazy time right now. So thanks for having me.
Easy, mates. And just by way of intro, mate, maybe let everyone know a bit about you, your journey to date, and how you got to where you are.
Yeah. So my background, I grew up on construction sites. My old man's a plumber. Sort of plumber, property developer. He was always sort of buying old sort of shitty houses back in Ireland and sort of doing them up and flipping them and stuff. So I always sort of done all my summer holidays and after schools and stuff and weekends working on different construction sites. Studied to be an architect and then decided it was right in the middle of GFC. And to be a fully qualified architect in Ireland, it takes about 9 years. So from when you start studying to when you can actually formally sign off a project is about 9 years of study. So, I mean, I think even doctors probably don't have to go through that amount of rigorous testing. So for me, I started looking at it and went, it's probably not for me. And then I chased the dollar and ended up in recruitment. So I've been in construction recruitment now for the last 10 years. So recruited in Ireland, the UK, New Zealand, Australia, and set up my business, which is essentially still a startup, 5 months ago. So this year, focusing on predominantly the pre-construction area of recruitment, and some project delivery stuff too.
Yeah, good, mate. And what made you make the leap to doing your own thing?
Well, that's the big question. I guess for me, I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, I was even laughing at some stuff that came up on my Facebook, from like 10 years ago, stuff that I was doing, buying stuff and selling it and putting a brand on it and stuff like that. And I've always been someone who wanted to build a brand from scratch. And so, yeah, that was the big factor. And yeah, I'm a terrible number two is probably another thing as well. I'm not good at taking like too much direction. So yep. I've got too many ideas and yeah, I just wanted to run something myself, So yeah, it's been good start, but just got to keep going.
What are you enjoying the most about running your own biz, and what are you enjoying the least about running your own biz?
I think, well, I was still running my own business, but I was a partner in that business, so I was a 50-50 shareholder, so that was back from 2019 to the end of last year. But that was a tough time, that was right in the heart of COVID when we started that, so that was very challenging. What am I enjoying most? I would say probably one thing that I've realized is that I really love is I've hired a few people and I can see the impact that the business is having on them. And so when you look at them and you go, well, they've got a family, they've got people to look after, and this little business that we are building is having a positive impact on them, so I've got quite a good fulfillment from that. And then what am I enjoying least is probably when I get an email from the ATO or someone like that, yeah, saying I have tax to pay, and that's probably, and I go, shit, what have I spent this month? And that's probably the painful part. But it's been fun. It's been good.
Yeah, good, mate. And in terms of your, I want to say growth, like what, your 5-year plan, like where do you see you taking the business? Like what are your aspirations? What do you want to do?
I mean, the lights just went off here. It's sustainability there. The sustainable lights. Well, I think, so when I started the business, I just started sprinting, it was just getting some money for the door just to try and survive. I don't know. See, to be honest, I think COVID has made me think that 5-year plans are like, complete ancient relics, because things are changing so fast that you've got to be able to adapt. And I think that's one of the
Valid.
cool things about having like a small sort of startup business, that you can like really, that horrible word, you can pivot fairly quickly, But for me, there's huge growth in recruitment. And I would like to do something that's not what, the term, agency recruitment is, it gets a fairly bad name. So I would like to specialize, be very hyper niche in what we do, get a really strong reputation, replicate that across multiple geographical locations, and do good work for our clients and do good work for our candidates. And I mean, apart from that, right now, that's all I'm thinking about.
Yep.
Not too far ahead right now.
Yep. And so there's a couple of things in that I wouldn't mind exploring with you. Probably to go to sort of the first question is around, like you talked about, obviously the recruitment industry having potentially a bit of a bad rap and a bit of a bad name, and you want to do things differently. Like, what does that sort of actually look like for you? Like, what sort of thoughts have you had? What sort of things are you doing with clients at the moment that, are setting you apart?
Yeah. So, I mean, every industry gets a bad name in some respect.
True.
Recruitment gets a bad name, but think of how many dodgy builders out there are, like the vast majority of like companies I'll have 120 contacts or companies on my, what I call a list, and within that list, and you could click on every single one of them. And some of these will be the biggest construction companies in Australia, and you look at their Google reviews and they'll be terrible,
Yep.
They'll have pissed off subcontractors. They'll have, built a project 6 months late or something like that, so can't keep everybody happy. For me, the painful thing about recruitment is, you get your Hayes and your Randstads and all these companies, and they, in my opinion, try to be all things to all people. And I just don't think that in today's society that you can. I think that you've got to specialize. Yep. And you've got to know your market inside out. I had a conversation with someone last week, and he'd been in the industry 35 years, and it was my conversation with him was the second time he's ever spoken to a recruiter, and he was blown away by just the in-depth knowledge and the people that I knew within the industry and the different entrenched networks that I have and we have as a business. So for me, I don't feel like you could do this job properly and be, long-term sustainable within it and sustainably successful within it unless you're, highly expertise or whatever you want to say.
Yep.
And you'll see that even with contractors and different consultancies throughout Australia. There's some companies will just do defense and social infrastructure. Some companies will maybe focus on TMR projects, because you can't do everything. And if you do everything, you kind of do nothing at the same time, So I'd rather be, that 80 to 90%, successful delivery than at sort of 20 to 30%.
Yeah. And so that hyper niche for you is that pre-contracts phase with construction companies?
Yeah, so basically how we've really worked it is, when I started recruiting in, 10 years ago, I've always sort of, moved and focused on those areas that people tend to not move that much. So you'll have site managers and site supervisors and some project managers, and they'll be employed for the project. We're typically pre-construction, whether that's your architects, your consultants, your design managers, your estimators. They're a little bit more involved in the company as opposed to just a specific project. So they're maybe focused on winning work or, creating efficiencies through design or whatever it might be. But I also find that in a sort of stereotypical and blanket look at it, pre-con wise, that people don't tend to move as much.
Okay.
as you would for supervisors, site managers, project managers. And for me, that's important, because if we're
Yep.
putting people into businesses, we want them to stay,
Yes. So I'm curious about that, because I mean, I talk to my coaching clients all the time about being hyper niche, and particularly consultancies in the engineering industry tend to be jack of all trades and do all things to all people, also be all things to all people. And I'm curious for you, like, so then I often talk to my coaching clients again about, well, pick an area that you get really good results in, pick an area that you love the clients, pick an area that you can charge a premium for your fees. And, with that kind of sort of matrix, really dive into then, okay, well, in the center of all of that is sort of one particular area that I love, has good clients, I enjoy doing the work, and I get paid really well. Was the process sort of similar for you, or was that more you saw an opportunity to be different in that sort of space or that field, and you didn't see anyone else playing in there?
Well, in terms of recruitment, I take a very sort of first principles approach to it, and I'll take it all back to back to zero and look at things from a bit of a bird's eye approach and go, well, where's the demand?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the skill shortage? Where can I offer value? Where can I charge a premium? Where, if I put a candidate into that particular job, are they going to stay? Is that going to affect my reputation? Is it going to enhance my reputation? All of those things were really sort of evidence from, when I started this particular business. I wanted, because in this market, everyone is looking for someone. So if you're a recruiter, how do you deliver? Like, I feel sorry for these people who are like 2-3 years experience and they've just been hired by, a company that's maybe just doing a little bit of everything, because they'll never really excel. They might do okay, but they'll never really excel. And what mostly happens is they'll excel for a while, and then it'll all turn to shit, and then all of a sudden, they're leaving the industry, or they've got burnout, or they're moving into IT and in technology or something like that, because they never really get a real proper foothold of the market because they're not specialist enough. And I think as well, like with COVID, people just want things quickly now.
Yeah.
Like people, like you look at, like, you order stuff online, people don't want to wait a week, people don't want to wait 2 weeks, they want it like the next day. And when someone's coming to us, they know that they come to us, they're getting a level of service that they're maybe not likely to get elsewhere. The other company might get them someone, that can definitely happen.
Mm-hmm.
But 80 to 90% of the searches that we work on, we fill within 45 days. And these aren't, just silly researches. These are quite highly defined positions where they're very technical, both from a communication perspective, but also from a technical perspective. Like what software they're using, what type of projects, and what their capability is. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about, you've got to specialize. And I look at it and go, well, if I'm charging a premium for it, it makes it, I just get more fulfillment from it too.
Yeah.
Like, I like to do the work then, instead of getting a load of jobs in that I can't really be bothered to work on,
Yeah, mate. And it's so important. Again, if I talk about some of the trainings I run with my clients around increasing your fees, let's not do the whole race to the bottom thing. Let's not undercut everyone just to win a project, because you do that and you end up completely resenting the client, resenting the project, resenting the work you're having to do, because you're not making any money, or you're losing money, or you've got management or shareholders or your wife or your partner on your back because you're not making any money. You just end up hating the work that you're doing. So have you actually, I think I saw a LinkedIn post from you on this around, your fees are higher than others, and how do you sort of navigate that conversation with clients?
For me, it's all, again, it's about expertise. If you want me to find you someone, and like that particular example, that company was looking for someone for 9 months.
Yep.
You know, the conversation was, well, why have you been looking for someone for 9 months? It's like, well, we've had 3 or 4 other agencies looking at it, and the reality of it is because the other agencies probably weren't incentivized either. You know, it just wasn't enough for them to go at. It's difficult to find position. They're not getting paid well for it. The reality, you know, it's something that they're just not overly incentivized to actually work on. And then when I had the conversation, I was 50% higher than everybody else, but I would work on it, you know, and my fill rate is the day I start working on it to the day that the person's actually starting to work is 45 days. So if you look at someone's got 30 days notice period, typically 4 weeks, you know, I'll usually have a shortlist completed and offers out accepted within 2 weeks. And it doesn't always work like that, but that's just as an average, you know. And that's what I mean by I know my information, I know my data.
Yeah.
You need to know this information in order to portray that to clients. Because if you're just sort of going to say, "Yeah, I'll do this for you," you know, "Good job, mate," we'll get someone. You know, what sense is that going to create in your client's head? You know. So as an example is they came back and said, "No, you're too high," and then I went, "Okay, well, I'm not working on it," and then they came back and gone, "Yeah, okay, and then okay, we'll do it for us." So and otherwise, you know, across the board, there's some companies would be on a certain percentage and other companies would be on a other percentage. I just keep everyone on the same percentage. But because for me, if a really strong candidate comes on the market and I've got 2 companies on a lower rate and another company on a higher rate, I mean, of course, I'm going to the companies on a higher rate.
Yep.
You know, so if you're that company, is it really worth it for 3-4%? You know, you probably should come up a little.
Yeah. And it sounds to me, mate, that you're super clear on the value piece, because when we are going into those discussions around fees and being higher, increasing your percentage, charging more than competitors in the marketplace, you have to shift the conversation to the value that you're bringing. Because if you just, like you said, yeah, I'm 50% higher, take it or leave it. It's like, well, you haven't given me any reason why I should go with you, so I'm probably going to leave it. Whereas if you can dial into the value that you bring, hyper niche, heaps of experience, here's my track record, that kind of thing, you can really build a compelling case. And again, I'm obviously talking about trainings I run with my clients too. You've got to talk about the value. You've got to really understand the value you can bring, understand your client's world, their pain points, what problems they need help solving, and talk about all of that more than you're talking about, you know, how much you charge, right?
Yeah, it's that cost to value ratio. What's this acquisition going to cost me, and how much value is that product going to bring into the business? Yep. You know, so especially in what we do, you know, we're bringing in people who largely are winning work for companies.
Yep.
So if they you know, if they're working for your business for 3 months and they win you $1 million project at 10% or even 5%, you know, that's covering their whole salary, you know, or well, certainly a good portion of it anyway, you know. So yeah, you've got to look at things from a mature perspective. My feeling is, don't be afraid to walk away from work. Don't get involved in bad work. If you're working on lower fees, then you've got to have good relationships in place. Or volume, you know. So if you've got some clients that are coming in and saying, you know, we've got a lot of this work, you're going to have it exclusively. It's at this rate, which is a little bit lower than what you would typically pay, and you go, well, fair enough, because that's probably allowing me to, you know, bring in 1 or 2 extra people this year or something like that, you know. So there has to be a reason for actually reducing your fee. And another thing that I worked with a coach during COVID, and he was really good. I would say he's probably the best coach I've ever had. Okay. And he said to me, if you're reducing your fees, you make sure you get something off them, you know. So I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, if you're reducing your fee, you need to at least get something like a public testimonial, you know. So If you're going to reduce your fee by 2% or 3%, and you deliver and you do that job at a, exemplary level, then they're under condition that they're going to go out to the market and give you a public testimonial, which is going to then bring in more work for you.
Yep.
So never do something for free, basically.
Yep. Love it. Mate, I want to shift the convo to cadence of work and because something you said at the start, which is, when you started your business, you basically just head down, bum up, I've got to do things that generate income. And so, reminded me of when I went from civil engineer working in a consultancy to moving into my business full time, going from a day a week to 5 days a week. And I was just like, I'm going to hit this hard. I can't, I'm excited, I'm energized. I'm just going to, shoot the lights out kind of thing. And I was getting up at 4 a.m. and I was doing all the, and so I completely burnt myself out in the first kind of 2 to 4 weeks because of this desire just to crush stuff and to really go as hard as possible. And it's a very similar theme in the marketplace at the moment where everyone's so busy, burnout's really real, overwhelm's real. How do you manage your cadence throughout the day? Like, do you structure your days in a certain way to get the best out of your energy? What works for you?
Everything's different. So obviously, I assume a large part of your audience is going to be different people within the construction industry. So they're going to have different things that they'll need to do on a daily tasks and stuff like that. For me, I work better in sprints. So, I'll work from say 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and I'll just be like the Tasmanian devil, just getting stuff out, and then I'll probably be useless for the next 15, 20, 30 minutes. Probably take myself off, go for a walk, grab a coffee, come back in, and you've got to do the stuff that you actually enjoy as well. So I've started running recently.
Saw that.
Like a run every day challenge. And so I was like, right, if I'm going to run every day, there's some days I'm going to not be bothered running. Like, obviously, So some days I would do 7K, and then the next day I'm like, I really can't be bothered to run. So I'd have a cheat code, right? So the cheat code is jump in my car and drive to the top of a hill, right? And then start running down the hill, because that's easy. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And then you get on the flats, and then all of a sudden you're warmed up, you're a little bit more energized, and you start, your things are good, So then you're into it. Think of your cheat code, if you're not feeling good, you're not switched on. What are the tasks that you love to do? I don't know what it might be. People get the weird kicks out of things. They might love pissing off a subcontractor or negotiating with someone, or you just get some really weird, twisted people out there. But wherever you get your kicks from and it's productive, focus on that. But I think, in terms of on a big picture level, there's massive burnout, and you can see companies are really struggling right now. It's probably the worst time to be in construction, because it's just a race to the bottom. It's a nightmare for bringing in new staff. How do you onboard staff correctly right now? Everyone's probably half-assing it to a certain level. You'll get companies who go, we're all about the people, and then all of a sudden, day one, they get the person in, they're chucked into a job and had no onboarding. They get an email address and they're like, here, take all this shit and sort it out for me, And that's what people are doing, and all of a sudden they're leaving, and then it's a really tough time to be in construction. So people are going to go through burnout, but you've got to take your days off. You've got to do stuff that are actually going to invigorate you. Leave work, ideally on time. Be productive. Be that person who's 90 to 100% productive during work hours, and to an extent, try and walk away from it in the evenings if you can. But I spoke to someone last week, and they had done over 200 I think it was about 270, 280 hours in a month.
Holy.
Yeah. So I worked that out. I was like, that's like what, 70 hours a week. So even if you're working 7 days a week, that's still 10 hours a day.
Yep.
So I mean,
That's not sustainable.
Where's the life? What are you working for? You know. But yeah, and I also think of goals, right? So like, what are the goals? So like, people have these outrageous goals of like, I want to sell my business in 2 years' time or whatever, or 3 years' time. But then what do you do once you've sold your business? You know, you're probably going to want to set up another business again, you know? So why don't you not think of it as like a 10-year, 20-year thing instead of, you know, if you think of like the richest people in the world have owned their business for a very, very long time, you know? So think of it long term instead of thinking of it just hour by hour, day by day.
Yep. Marathon, not a sprint, 100%. And to your point, like, I think, people can fall into the trap of just feeling obliged and feeling like they have to work long hours. And, you know, the workload's always going to be there, right? And the client requests are always going to be there. But, you know, I always try and orientate everything I do to sort of two things, which is joy and fulfillment. Like, you know, I started my own business so that I could move to the beach and spend more time in the water and see my kids more and do the pickups and all that sort of stuff. You know, and that's me, and I chose that sort of business owner journey. But if, you know, you're an employee of a company, why are you doing what you're doing? Do you love what you're doing? Do you genuinely enjoy what you do every day? Do you know, get out of bed with a skip in your step? Or is it more about, you know, your family? I'm doing this so that I can provide for my family and create an amazing life and all that sorts of things. It's really important to get connected to why it is that you're doing what you're doing, because, you know, 280 hours or whatever you just said a month, that's not sustainable unless you love what you're doing and it energizes and brings you lots of fulfillment. Even then, probably wouldn't encourage it. But it really comes back to, you know, why you're doing what you're doing, right?
Yeah, and like, it's easy to get stuck in these big companies as well. You know, like you can join a company and you can, you know, think this is going to be the best thing ever, and realize that, you know, for the last 10 years you've never got out of bed with skipping your step. You know, so it's hard, you know, when you're entrenched into these companies and businesses, it's hard to see the light. Like, it must have been hard for you to go from being a civil engineer to owning your own coaching business. You know, like, that takes balls to do that, you know. Because there's no, and the reason that everybody's not doing this what you're doing is because, like, it's not an easy thing to do, you know. Especially in construction, where everyone will be like, why would you want to do that? You know, exactly. Everyone's pointing fingers.
Yep. Yeah, exactly, mate. Yeah, no, you're right. It's not an easy thing at all, but it comes back to, again, why you do it. I mean, for me, I love it. And, you know, my journey was director and shareholder of a medium-sized civil engineering consultancy. Through that period, didn't know what I was doing, sought the services of a business coach to sort of help me through that 9-year period. I came through that phase of my life and sort of was just like, that was amazing. I learned heaps, but there's actually no like real coaching for people in that position, specifically in our industry. So the idea was born, and then I did the part-time thing whilst building the business, and then jumped in full-time. But yeah, like the internal stuff you have to navigate, right, when you make that leap's pretty crazy. And, you know, going from a PAYG, regular paycheck every fortnight or every month, to holy shit, like, I'm in charge of this ship and I've got to actually, it's all on me. And that can cripple some people, or that can inspire and excite some people. So again, for me, it comes back to, why am I doing this? And that fuels me every day. Yeah,
no, 100%. You've got to have that.
Yeah. Mates, question for you. Oh, your lights went out again. So I'm really big on, like, I'm really curious about how people, like, what makes people successful, and what is it about how they view themselves and how they view the world that allows them to sort of turn up every day and make the most of every opportunity, and to continue to push forward even when shit's hard and you're feeling a bit stuck and unmotivated? Like, it's almost like, so what are the stories we tell ourselves, and how do I view myself? What sort of beliefs do I have? And how do I view others that allows me to go out every day and be the best version of myself? May not be something you've ever thought about, but sort of what is it about you that has allowed you to do what you do and be successful to date?
I mean, I'm hyper competitive.
Yeah, love it.
I'm a really competitive person. Like probably unhealthily competitive, you know, as I said, I've been running and I am racing everybody who I see when I'm running, you know, and it's pathetic. It's totally pathetic, but that's just who I am.
Yep.
And I've always been that way. You know, if you put me on the football pitch or something like that, I'll be screaming at everybody else, you know, what are you not doing this? Like, I'm just that person. I can't stand losing. And for me, it's like the thought of success is like, it's not like I'm driven by success, but I'm driven by, I do not want to lose. Like, you know, in recruitment, it is hyper competitive, probably similar to construction. You might get down to last two on a tender or something like that, and you're like, right, we're desperate to win this job. You know, similarly, there might be two people working on the one assignment, or two companies working on the one assignment in recruitment. And for me, I just like cannot lose. I just can't lose because I just can't face it if I lose, you know.
Yep.
And I've always been that way. Like I got rejected by Hayes when I was like 20, 21. And for the rest of my life, I've just been like, I want to destroy Hayes. It's terrible. It's just who I am, you know. And I mean, it's pretty pathetic because I probably never will. But I'm driven by not losing. Probably more than driven by like a financial number or a number of people in the business. You know, like for me, that's not really what gets me going. I'm driven by competing with someone and winning, and I always think that I'll find a way to win, no matter what. Like I'll find some sort of competitive edge to make sure that I win. And yeah, it's probably not the right sort of answer, but that's just who I am.
No, but it points to a certain set of beliefs, a certain psychology, which is, yeah, you're driven to win. And if that's what fuels you, if that's what helps you get out of bed every day, or driven to not lose anyway.
Yeah.
If that's what fuels you and gets you out of bed every day, 100%, like it's about really going inward and working out who we are, what drives us, what motivates us, and then really doubling down on that to ensure that, you know, every day we turn up being the best version of ourselves. So
like for me though, probably the part that I need coaching on is that when I'm at the top, I don't have like that same level of drive. So for example, like if I become the top biller in the company, once I've done that, I'm like, oh well, I've completed this. This is easy now. Like, and then you know what I mean. So, but I'm probably the most at my best when I'm the coattails of someone else. You know, like you know, when I see that there's someone in front of me, that gives me that benchmark, and I'll find a way to win. You know, it's like that Formula One thing. Like it's like that tiny margins. And that's probably where I'm at my best. But yeah, it's important, I think, to have something as well in business to go, I'm trying to be like that, or I want to beat that, you know. And I have multiple, like, and I look at them as not as like a competitor, but like an inspiration at the same time as well. Like, I'm inspired to be better than them, you know. That's kind of what I focus on.
Yeah, good, mate. Change things up a little bit. Where do you see, so obviously the market's insane. Where do you see the market heading in, like based on, obviously you're having conversations with quite high up people within the industry. Where do you see the market going in the next sort of 24 months?
I mean, it's kind of like how long's a piece of string. It depends who you are, you know, like it depends, like you could ask 4 different people and 4 different job titles on what their you know, vision on the market is going to be in the next, you know, 4 years. You know, you ask the CEO will be super optimistic and positive. You know, you ask the estimator and he'll be super negative, you know. But yeah, it depends on who you ask. For me, I reckon it probably lies somewhere in the middle. I think there's a good hook for the Brisbane market right now. You know, you've got the 2032 games, you've got
Totally.
the investment in infrastructure, you've got on a Australian level affordable-ish housing, even though it's getting more expensive. You've got the good weather, so there's a big hook for Queensland right now. Where I don't know if you're even saying Melbourne, if you're in Sydney, although it's extremely busy, I just don't know if it has the same level of hook,
Yep.
So I say it's probably, I can see Brisbane continuing to get busy and continuing to grow. I just don't know whether this level of growth is going to continue, So we're seeing like unprecedented demand, but it's like fake news. It's like fake demand. There's the reality of it is probably 30% of what is actually projected is probably the real value of it. Where I get that number, I just made it up in my head.
Feels about right.
But I always look at Seek as an example, right? So look at Seek and look how many job ads there are. There's an incredible amount of construction jobs. And I go, well, there's probably 50% of those, maybe even 60 or 70% of those are probably from recruitment companies. And I always believe that it's probably 50% of those recruitment companies are actually recruiting for those jobs. They're actually live.
Yep.
So there's an element of growth is a little bit isn't real. That growth isn't an actual level. Like I have a client last week told me they need 10 people, but if I got them 10 perfect people right now, I don't think they're going to hire 10. I'd say they're probably looking around 3 to 4.
Right.
So yeah, there's a what they think is real and what is actually real. There's probably a big difference there.
Well, it's also where are the people coming from, right? Like, they talk about this skill shortage, which I'm sure is real, and trying to find right people. But, to your point before about whether particularly the Southeast Queensland market can continue to grow at the rate, like it's probably going to be hamstrung by a number of things, but people and materials, right? So it can only grow to a certain point.
Yeah, I think a good thing that I'm seeing right now is that people who have maybe emigrated to Australia and, are from the Middle East or something like that, they're actually beginning to get jobs, whereas, they've been sitting there for 2-3 years without work, and I'm seeing, the skill shortage is real when they're actually going, let's interview this guy because he could be good or girl, and that's why I go, that's why, the skill shortage is pretty severe, because the vast majority of Australian businesses want Australian experience, so like I have a guy in interview in a couple of hours and he's currently in Dubai right now, I had a guy last week, he had an interview in New Delhi
right.
For a business that had an office in New Delhi, and they're like, we'll get him over here and sponsor him. So there's things that Australian economy is doing, or the Australian government and stuff is doing well, and each state government is doing well. Like if you compare that to like what's happening in New Zealand and stuff, like they're still 6 months behind what Australia are doing with regards to letting people into the country. So I just can't see the same level of growth continuing, but I reckon we've got a good couple of years hopefully in front of us. Yeah.
And in terms of they talk about it being an employee market at the moment. So you're obviously talking to heaps of candidates. What are they looking for in companies? Like when they make the decision between the top 2 or the top 3, like what are sort of the main things that they're looking for when they accept the position?
Right now, it's big things, flexibility. So the whole COVID thing is really like imprinted that in people's minds that they can do a lot of their job from home successfully, and now they're going out to the market saying, well, I want a piece of that. I might not be wanting full-time working from home, but I want a piece of that, and there's still so many companies that are very traditional and like they probably just haven't moved on with the times. Like you do
Yeah.
need to have some level of flexibility there, especially if it is a job that doesn't need the same amount of collaboration, or you're maybe not based on site or something like that. But flexibility is massive. Also, like companies are candidate wise are looking for the good candidates aren't looking at money. The good candidates are looking at project pipeline, retention. The top level candidates are looking for that. The medium level candidates are looking for money right now because they know they've got maybe 12, 18, 24 months pipeline, or where they can actually make a lot of money. And then others are just looking for like a bit of I would say something different, like taking and capitalizing on the market and looking for that growth opportunity. So you might get someone who's in a senior role is now looking at options at like middle management, senior management, executive. People are really looking to take this opportunity and get into those bigger positions. But there are a lot of candidates in this market that are driven by money, and that will come back to bite them because they're going to become an operational cost that's too expensive, and they unfortunately will probably get let go when there is a slight hiccup or a bump in work coming on, and they go, well, this guy is a 140K candidate and we're paying him 170. He can go to somewhere else. And that's construction. We've seen it with COVID. People get laid off, and that's what will happen.
Yep. So it sounds like really it's flexibility, but also flexibility, autonomy, but exciting projects, right? Because there are a lot of projects on, and potentially some of these candidates have come from doing the same pipeline, same road for the last 10, 15 years. So if they can jag a forward pipeline of really exciting projects, it sounds like that will be what drives them to make the decision to go with that particular company.
Yeah, I think if you're a really serious person about your career and you're very career driven, you know the money will come.
Yeah,
like that that will come. So I wouldn't focus on money. I'd be focusing on your career as a whole, like delivering the most exciting projects, delivering difficult projects, getting a really good reputation for yourself. These are the things that I'd be focusing on. Becoming a real master of being able to keep everyone on side. You don't have to keep everybody happy, but keep everybody on your side. These are the things that I think that you should get really good at in these types of markets, because that's what will allow you to grow and go from project manager to senior PM or project director or something like that, and you've got to think of it as a long term. Yeah, of course you can make more money, but the more projects you're delivering successfully, the more money you're going to get as a consequence.
Yeah, 100%. Mate, final question for you. I haven't prepared you for this. So obviously you are the sum total of all of your experiences, wins, learnings, failures, if you want to look at them like that. And you get the opportunity to sit down with a 10-year younger version of yourself and impart some advice. Like, what would you, with all the stuff that you know now to be true and all the, the stuff that you got under your belt, what sort of advice or wisdom would you impart on the 10-year younger version of yourself?
That's a good question, because I don't know. It's a hard one because you go, well, if I give him all the wisdom, then he might not get to this point. Do you know what I mean? So I think you've got. I mean, there's. I remember thinking back now, and like there's times that I would go into the office, and recruitment's different. Like I don't know exactly who the audience will be, but you're commission driven, right? So you're driven by the deal, right? And that's the bad thing about recruitment is you're just thinking about the deal. That's it, right? But I mean, you've done it 10 years. I mean, it's not just about the deal anymore. But when you're at that part, and you're going, there was times I remember where I'd hit a run, I'd be placing someone every week, and then you'd maybe take your foot off the gas, and you'd maybe not place someone for 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then you begin to question yourself, like, am I doing this right? Can I still do this anymore? What's wrong with me? You know, I remember there was times where I would go into the office and I wouldn't speak to anyone. I mean, no one, purely because I was so appalled with myself that I hadn't got another one. That's the whole thing about that competitiveness. Like I'm like,
yeah,
I'm competitive with myself in May than I was with myself in April. Do you know what I mean? So like in April, I may have done such and such a figure, but if I don't do that in May, like that's crap, you know?
Yeah.
So I would probably say, just let, you know, don't take it so seriously all the time.
Yep.
You know, don't be so driven to the point where it doesn't become a good thing, you know? But if you're driven, be driven in the right ways, you know, like be sensible about it. But I would also just say, go have a lot of fun and make a lot of mistakes and go for the crack, as we say in Ireland, do you know what I mean? Yeah, so probably that's something along those lines.
Yeah, mate, sounds good to me. Mick, thank you for your time today, mate. Had a lot of fun. Where can people follow along you on your journey? LinkedIn the best place, or?
Yeah. Get me on LinkedIn, Mick Donaghy on LinkedIn. I'm writing something there every day or every other day. And you can find us at gedon.com.au. So that's GEDON. And happy anyone out there that needs some advice, you know, feel free to reach out. It's a tricky time in this market, you know, and you don't often get the chance to actually reflect. So just remember just to take it easy and take a step back every now and again and ask some questions and do due diligence.
Mate, 100%. Thanks for your time today, dude. Had a lot of fun.
Awesome. Okay, mate. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Easy.